Arr, grog.
Hello and welcome to the Sideshed podcast. It's just Peter and Matthew this week, with Keri off gallivanting with her children. So, hey Keri, hope you're having fun. And Matthew, it's probably for the best that Keri's not here because otherwise, could she have contained her rage hearing Russ dissing her beloved pork scratchings?
It was shocking, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the fact is, what did he say? A pork scratching starter, a pot noodle main, and a deep fried Mars bar for dessert?
Yeah, but words that Keri lives her life by, pretty much.
That was she started on that diet at college, and she's still running with it, isn't she?
Well, she's got a mind like a bear trap. She's radiantly beautiful, and she's produced two, gorgeous children of it. So who's Russ to attack our beloved Keri?
Exactly. And you don't get to cast aspersions about pork scratchings if you've just eaten a beetroot mousse, to be honest.
So yeah, bringing your professional skills to bear. For those who don't know, Matthew was a professional chef in Dublin in a previous life. What did that irritate you?
It only irritated me in that I worked for quite a while in a quite swanky restaurant that is attached to a very famous department store that the characters from Absolutely Fabulous would always go for lunch in the show. So I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about. And yeah, it was full of mousses and foams and stuff like this, And in Ireland, sometimes you just want to get back to basics. So I thought, the beetroot mousse, it was okay, but it was a bit much.
So a bit out of date and giving you some rather horrible flashbacks to...
Yeah, when you've had to make carrot jelly, you never really want to go back.
How dare you assume I haven't, Matthew? I might be incredibly competent with my vegetable jellies.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, it's all right. You weren't to know. But yeah, it was so. But Russ is eating his free. What was it? Beetroot mousse, you said.
Well, it wasn't free, was it? The gin tonics were free.
Right.
Well, it is free
for him
because even though it was his idea, Lily's paying for the bloody thing with her bonus, isn't she?
Yeah, he's paying with his bonus. Well, eventually, but she is paying with her bonus, and it was getting a lot of traction on Twitter, like the big, strong reaction to the fact that Russ was basically freeloading at home, and now he was freeloading at the hotel as well. I wasn't particularly upset about it. I thought it was like maybe more reflective of how modern relationships work. But as a red-blooded Portuguese / German / Bristolian / Brazilian man, how do you feel about the idea of being taken out by your missus?
If it's your birthday, maybe. It's funny, isn't it? Because it's rather an old-fashioned concept that Russ would pay for everything if they were going for dinner or something like that, whereas now it's quite seen that you would split the bill. But in terms of letting Lily pay for the whole thing, I thought that was a bit much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would generally say that it's far, as we saw with Layla and Roy, wasn't it? She pointed out to him that it's far more traditional now to split the bill. But obviously Russ doesn't subscribe to that. And we're fans of Russ on this show. I think we've been quite clear about what we like about him and what he brings to the show. But occasionally I do feel that the script writers, they just come up with an episode and they're like, right, now we're going to make him a total dick in this episode. And I felt they did that this week with the behavior at front desk. Although I didn't feel Roy really needed to explain all the mistakes that had been made. He could just say there was a mistake and change it. But that's my service industry head kicking in.
Yeah, don't smell my fingers, Russ, but there has been a problem. I'm absolutely knackered, literally.
What is going on with him? We know what's going on, right? It's all the little Easter eggs are there. Like he's popping into the shop for breath mints. He's been getting lots of, how he goes to the shop for breath mints, says to Susan, "Oh, I see you haven't got any." And she says, "No, I don't think so." And, obviously she's not keeping track of the stock or whatever.
You've never done the internet dating thing, have you?
I haven't, no, but that doesn't mean I haven't ended up dating because of the internet.
How does that work?
Well, I haven't used the sites whose function is to meet people, but I have ended up meeting people through social media.
Not many people went to the Chumbawamba reunion, and you can only organise it over the internet. Oh, that was a foul and low blow. Sorry, I can't.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, you get my meaning though, don't you? I never had Tinder, and in Ireland, what was it? Plenty of Fish. I think that's still floating around. I do have a very good friend who and started using Plenty of Fish quite recently, and just such a wonderful thing she's done for me. She sends me all the desperate DMs she gets from blokes.
Not all of them.
Not all of them. No, not the artistic, south of the belly button.
That's a lovely euphemism. It's in the same vein as jazz cigarette. No, sorry, not jazz. Jazz magazines.
Jazz magazines, yeah,
more artful, yeah.
Yeah, so I have seen how thirsty some of the guys are on there, and it is quite funny. Just to get that little insight. I'll have to get back to her, and she hasn't sent me them for a while. I presume she's deleted the app because I think she just gave up on mankind.
She should hold out some hope. Being a man in your 30s, and single, is remarkably easy to stand out from the crowd. Like the other men are so appalling. You would go for dates with women, and you'd hear some of the stories of the stuff that they'd had to put up with to end up with you, to lower themselves to you. I mean, it was always quite, my wife is an extraordinary woman, so much better than I deserve, but I think it's a testament to how much everyone else screwed up.
Yeah, well, I was going to follow that up with, so you're lucky to have us, but then you kind of also pointed out that the other side set the bar so low. But I know what you mean. I mean, there are some people who permanently will make you look good, even if you are actually just functioning at an average level.
Every woman has several of these stories in their locker, and I don't think men do in the same way. I mean, you're not risking as much as a man, are you? I mean, you can, basically the worst that happens is you're being treated a bit shabbily. You don't have any of the other kind of fears. But anyway, we're going off on a wild tangent.
We have a bit. So Roy's
gone off on his wild tangent, multiple tangents it seems, because he's absolutely knackered. I felt they played that with a little bit of a heavy hand. I mean, he's a man, and he's our age, isn't he? He's a man well into his 40s. Is he not, or early 50s? I mean,
I think he's early 50s, isn't he, Roy?
Yeah, I mean, how would he have the energy? I mean, or is he again? We're back to chefs again. Maybe he's having to use some sort of chemical assistance to help him do the long shifts.
I think that's the problem, isn't it? He hasn't got the energy. He's been pushed in this direction by Kate, and he's burning the candle at both ends. I was trying to think of another way I could mix that metaphor then, but I couldn't.
He's having lots of sex.
He's
having lots and lots of sex.
And he seems to be struggling a bit with it. I mean, the fact that he was going for breath mints, I thought that was the strangest thing ever. But
yeah, I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? They have to. I think it was Kerry Davis wrote this week. But they have to leave so much between the lines. So if they can't actually sort of play out the full horror of Roy stumbling home, then they have to sort of do play the old can of Gold Spot. Did your dad ever have Gold Spot?
Gold Spot? What's Gold Spot?
Gold Spot. So my dad was single. He was suddenly recently single in the kind of early 80s, and I remember these little green and gold sort of like mini cans, little aerosol cans started turning up, and they were kind of like little kind of breath sprays. But it was very much the kind of Don Johnson Benetton rolled up sleeve, pastel t-shirt kind of look and lifestyle.
No, not familiar with those. I'm familiar with those little things that you spray in your mouth. That
was I think Gold Spot was the the kind of leading brand. It was the kind of Lynx Africa for your mouth.
Oh, okay. Blimey, that's a thought. I tell you one thing that's still very popular here in Portugal, and I don't know if it is elsewhere. Denim aftershave.
Oh,
it still has the original logo as well.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons everyone should go and live in another country. It's just so that you can see some of these strange little portals, or realize that that brand that you convince yourself belonged to your country actually was invented somewhere else years before. Anyway, that's okay. So anyway,
the Archers, yeah,
Archers. Roy's at the hotel. He is dog tired. Russ is being a snob, impugning Keri's beloved pork scratchings. There was lots of theories about Russ trying to kind of like potentially groom Chelsea or spotting another potential victim, which I didn't buy.
I saw a lot of that across social media, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, I mean, but originally I called absolute bullshit, but then today, when I was re-listening, I thought, oh, but God, what if they're right? I mean, we both poo-pooed the Jackie Weaver prediction. And yet, some of the greatest minds in, the Archers fandom were proven right on that one.
Well, I didn't so much poo-poo it as in dread its predictability. but it
Right.
did
Yeah.
it did come to pass. And yeah, so Sunday episodes are back. I mean, I was going to say let's just pretend that Sunday episode didn't happen, but I was afternoon watching the football, and I was a little bit. My interest was piqued. Let's see who this is. So I turned it on, and straight away I heard the voice. And did I message in the group or did I message Keri? I just said it's Jackie Weaver. Immediately, I could sense that was her, and that's where they were going to go. But does that mean that this entire Scarecrow story was cooked up just so there could be a protest against the occult, and then Jackie Weaver could show up just to say you have no authority, and then that's it, and then she pisses off again?
Let's say that they moved as fast as they could. We've got to get Weaver, is said in the scriptwriters' room. This is like the ultimate coup. It's because it was a very popular move getting Jackie Weaver on the show. So regardless of whether it fits with your and my taste, that's a kind of almost a secondary thing. Well, it's definitely a secondary thing. But they have to get Weaver on, so they're running months and months ahead. So they leap on that. They get in touch with with Jackie, they book her in, and they record 3 or 4 months ago. So yeah, fair enough. They need to kind of get the whole thing set up plot wise. But surely, what if you're going to use the punchline? You don't have the authority. You want to have her taking down a patronizing Jim, which is one of his few poor qualities. You want her to be, like lambasting Brian for some kind of patrician behavior. You want the whole because the whole point of Jackie Weaver, she is a one joke person. Not her as a. I've seen some interviews with her. She seems like a very as an erudite and sort of clever and witty woman, but her reputation, she's a one joke person. So why didn't they lean into that more?
Yeah, I know. I mean, they could have also used her Britney Spears line, which I thought was quite good.
Sorry, what's that?
She's a two joke pony.
Okay, so I've already revealed how ignorant I am.
Well, that's the interesting thing about all of this, isn't it? Because I was like, oh, it's Jackie Weaver. Yeah, okay. So I suspected that was going to happen. A lot of people were already saying it was going to happen, but looking across social media, it was quite interesting just how many people were asking, sorry, who is Jackie Weaver? Lots of people didn't know who she was. And bear in mind, you've got listeners stateside as well. Well,
yeah.
Not just stateside, but all around the world. And all right, that Handforth council thing, it was like a slow drip, wasn't it? It took about a month for it to get, it was a pre-Christmas parish council meeting, wasn't it? And then it ended up kind of becoming popular around January, getting likes and views, and then it trickled right over into the mainstream media within a week or two.
Yeah.
So you'd imagine most people knew who she was, but there's a lot of people in England didn't know, and there were those three opinions. Who is she? I loved it. I didn't like it. It was very clunky. I mean, I was the latter. I listened again today. I didn't hear anything better in that episode on a second listen. I'll be honest. Maybe I'll have some epiphany during the omnibus on Sunday, but I seriously doubt it. It was all right. I mean, we've said before as well, Princess Margaret didn't really turn in, the Laurence Olivier of performances when she showed up either. So it's a clumsy thing to do, isn't it? Working a celebrity guest, and I think in terms of that, she didn't do terribly. But
no, she was good.
If you like it, that's fine. I mean, it was good in the way that a Gary Barlow album is good, in that it's not.
Well, I did enjoy hearing Tracy come back, and that was kind of my takeaway at the end of the episode. I was like, well, I really enjoyed that. What I realised was I just enjoyed hearing Susie doing a sterling job at, playing Tracy. I thought she was just fantastic at playing Tracy. And that quite often happens to me. Like I can enjoy 15. Like today, I enjoyed hearing Brian and Adam kind of chatting away for a while until I realised I was bored with the plot. But I just enjoyed hearing Brian acting. And that's so much of this week has just the bits I've enjoyed have been a bit of Jenny, a bit of Brian. Russ and Lily. Russ is so ridiculously over the top as a kind of pantomime baddie that I'm just on the edge of my seat the whole time he's on. Anything can happen when Russ is around, like in terms of kind of your emotions.
He flew right off the handle when Tracy brought up the complimentary G&Ts, didn't he?
Like Susie, the way that she managed to show Tracy's recognition that she'd been lied to, but she was very politely kind of like dancing around that, I thought was a really great piece of acting, because it wasn't really written that in the script. And sometimes it's it's great when you can hear or see that, and sometimes where the acting actually gives a whole new depth.
I was just very happy to be back in Grey Gables.
I got the impression that Roy was supposed to be having sex with dozens of different women.
Yeah, that's what I got as well, because he was practically stoned, wasn't he, on reception?
Yeah, exactly, completely out for the count. It would have been more interesting if he was kind of like, so Jazz is complaining about being dog tired going to work because Tracy's got keeping him up all night. That would have been a more interesting plot if sort of Roy is kind of caught between sort of lust for a woman he really doesn't particularly like, who's cracking in bed, and also the rest of his life.
I would like Tracy as the wrecker of Jazzer, as we've discovered she is. I would like her and Roy to sit down and have a real good chat about Roy's sex life. That would be great, I think. I would really enjoy that scene, because she's not backwards in coming forwards, and Roy is clearly getting it. I don't know what's going on in terms of number of partners, but I think those two could really teach each other a few things.
There was lots of statistics a couple of years ago, a few years, it might be a decade ago. I'm so, time is, God knows what. Anyway, it might be a long time ago. There was lots of statistics about the big rise in sexually transmitted diseases amongst young people, like in their teens, and also kind of like in people in their more advancing years. Now, Roy's only in his 50s, but it might be one of these kind of little sort of BBC charter plots where Roy has collected a kind of a full set of different diseases. He's got warts there, crabs there, the whole lot.
He's losing his mind through syphilis, so he keeps booking people into single rooms instead of doubles.
Yeah, you're already ahead of the. Yeah, exactly. It's already, the symptoms are it's already playing out, and it's and it also turns out he's been wearing an old fashioned top hat dipped in mercury. He's got a full set of degenerative mental diseases.
Yeah, you are right about that thing about the it was the divorcee community, wasn't it? There was the rise of STDs amongst people in their 50s and their 60s who had been married and suddenly found themselves on the market again, and just this kind of Teflon thinking, well, no one in this social circle is going to be
a young person thing.
Yeah. So let's see what happens. I mean, I think that storyline is going to go somewhere. To go back to what you said about Russ, I was much the same when I saw this whole thing about how he suddenly became interested in the idea of going to dinner at Tracy's when it was mentioned that Chelsea needed tuition or study tips. I was exactly like you, Peter. I was like, okay, listen, we're setting this guy up to be this villain, but he's not going to groom Chelsea. But when I listened again, like you, I thought, there is something in this. They're going somewhere with this story, and he passed it off as there are some people who don't give a monkeys about their child's education, and he's appearing that that's why he wants to do it.
I was suckered in. Not suckered in. That assumes that the rumours are true. I thought he sounded sincere, and I quite liked him at that moment. And I'm not, my love of Russ is not me liking him as a person, but I thought he seemed pretty. Anyway, I thought it was sincere. But you, the second listen, are you fully signed up to the idea that he's going to groom Chelsea, or
no? I'm not fully signed up, but I went from being like, this is zero chance, this is just Russ hate again, because there was a little bit of talk recently that before it was revealed to be Rory, I don't know if you saw this, but some people were even speculating that maybe Mia was dating Russ, which is obviously completely illegal. And I was, come on, give the guy a break, for God's sake. But when this happened this week, I became a little bit suspicious. Plus, Tracy threw in that she's just interested in the wrong sort of boys as well, so I thought there was a little bit of a setting up of that. But maybe it's just a big red herring, and it's not going to turn out to be that at all. I would like that to be the case, but
they could have him the victim of a "there's no smoke without fire" plot. So, or they could have him. He's got this reputation as a someone who dates, people that he's responsible for and who are perilously close to being, illegal. And then, he gets accused by Chelsea as she becomes infatuated with him and then accuses him of something as an act of revenge when he spurns her or something.
That's better. That would be better.
It'd be more interesting, and it might be sort of a bit. And also, the other thing is that they've got. It's like, if you think of the old hackneyed, compare something to food. They're setting a plate of food. There's already so much red meat on the table at the moment for the Archers. We've already got so much going on. Can they squeeze in another one of these huge, very kind of consequential and big plots? And I would say for the time being, they can't. So I think it's going to be, I think it's more about tweaking Lily's conscience. If she's done the dirty on this awful, redundant man, then it almost excuses her going and having a night of passion with Sol. However, if he's turned out to be this kind of like, caring and thoughtful man, then all of a sudden her guilt is placed in a different light.
Well, this was part of it, wasn't it? She almost let it slip to Lizzie that the reason she was paying for this was because of how guilty she feels about what happened with Sol, and then she turned it around and just said because of everything that he'd done at Lower Loxley, was it? Or was it just the fact that he painted the painting?
Yeah.
She covered it up anyway, didn't she? That she was about to say that she was booking this trip to Grey Gables kind of out of guilt of what happened.
Yeah. There's multiple ways of being unfaithful to people. It doesn't. I mean, everyone gets fixated on sex, don't they? But ultimately, he admitted that he had effectively abandoned her emotionally for a long period of time, and so if he did find out, if he was a man of maturity, he might be able to see how he'd almost kind of loaded the gun himself. It doesn't necessarily excuse what Lily did, not that but he. If he's capable of making that apology, he should also see how he'd put Lily he'd set Lily up to make that mistake.
Yeah, I can see how you might have that thing that you were talking about earlier, that you might have the awkward advance from Chelsea, and then it's Russ will reject but be completely judged in that light. I think you told me before, didn't you? There's something I'd missed in the finer details, that his wife was a former student as well. Did you tell me that?
Jess, I think she was. I think that was, or she was at least, she was a young woman. I think she was a. No, I think she was a former student. I think she was very young when they met or something. Anyway, I think he has got previous, or there is some kind of pattern. I don't know. I stand by what I said. I think it's too much for them at the moment, and it's also a bit it's a bit too route one. You should never be surprised by the Archers doing something completely obvious, but then you should also never be surprised by them doing something completely balmy. I mean, that's how they keep us addicted, isn't it?
No, absolutely, yeah. We'll wait and see. And if we've got that wrong about Russ's first marriage or only marriage, then let us know.
Well, okay, this is the problem. I mean, we're feeling Keri's absence in many ways, but one of them is she tends to be our eye for detail and also a kind of repository of kind of all the truths. Or well, we just believe what she tells us anyway.
Yeah, but if Keri was here, it would just be her ranting about pork scratchings for 50 minutes.
Exactly. There would just be all you would have heard, dear listener, is the sound of smashing furniture and kind of like just the endless me just adding thousands of beeps as she went on yet another.
Also, I don't get any kicks out of pretending that Tracy is that dumb with the amnesia conference thing. I just think that's a little bit too insulting when Lily says to Russ, you have that thing, the amnesia conference, and Tracy's like, oh well, never mind. That's a shame. I mean,
sorry, that's 4 syllables, so I didn't bother listening.
It's very, very insulting, isn't it? But yeah, on just to go circle right back round, very happy to be back in the hotel. Would have loved a little bit of Oliver. Didn't happen, considering Roy was pretty much useless there. And also one person that was at Grey Gables, but we only heard about it later was Vince. He was there for a business conference, wasn't he? And spied Russ and Lily out on the veranda or the balcony, which then he mentioned to Lizzie today, was when Lizzie unleashed hell on him. So let's talk a little bit about that, because we know you're the fan of Vince. Can you imagine Vince as a kitten, Peter?
I thought it was so obvious that Vince hadn't done anything wrong. I didn't really think he had done anything. I mean, it seemed kind of unlikely, given their relationship, that he wouldn't just have the guts to say to Lizzie, "Look, by the way, this is happening." Like, it didn't ring true that Vince wouldn't just be completely honest with Lizzie about it, especially given how it's Lizzie's largesse that allows him to be in that relationship.
He's hanging on, isn't he? He's clinging on to Lizzie. He's tiptoeing around her. She really strung him along before she let him fully know that he was considered partner material. Then she finally drops the L-bomb, and all is right with the world. And then he goes and does this thing where, it was so stupid of him to do that, because not only, all right, he couldn't have known that Lily was going to call Steph, get the number off Freddie and call, but the wedding's at her brother's barn, for God's sake. I mean, of course they're going to be able to report back. David's probably going to notice that his sister isn't there. It was just completely ridiculous as an idea. And I know that in the past, I've done things where, you don't lie, but you tell a certain version of the truth in order to try and protect somebody from something. And then you eventually realize, actually, the truth was better. And trying to shield them from something or protect them from something wasn't wise. It's that whole thing about, what the eyes don't see, the heart can't grieve over, right? But I just think that he should have just come clean and said, look, I've got 3 psycho exes. Is that the first time we've had that he has 3 exes? I know he mentioned his exes. I was asking about this
I was surprised.
I was asking about this on social media tonight, because Keri foolishly left me in charge of the Cider Shed pod Twitter, and I did actually ask that question, and someone said that they felt it had been mentioned over the pint with David. I know there was a bit of family history that came up when he was having that pint and a slash with David, but I don't remember him mentioning 3 exes.
No.
I remember him mentioning trouble with one of the daughters and an ex-wife and his mum, but that was it.
Yeah, it was surprising. I was surprised to find out there was 3 ex-wives, and that it does sort of shed a different light on him, because how I took it before was he'd had this one solid kind of marriage. I'd imagined he'd sort of met her in his teens. It kind of fizzled out. It's the kind of it's like the Matt Letitia, marry your childhood sweetheart, and then it all goes pear-shaped in the kind of like in the harsh light of your success. And then and then here he is, and he's having his second chapter. I didn't really realize he was a kind of Richard Burton figure, kind of with sort of multiple marriages, left, right, and centre. Or actually, is that being unfair on Richard Burton? But anyway,
he went back to Elizabeth Taylor eventually,
exactly,
didn't he?
Yeah, I got the multiple marriages right. It's just not the number of women right.
Not only didn't know that he had 3 exes, do we know that Vince was in the wrong in any of those breakups? Were any of them? I mean, presumably they weren't amicable because of the way that he was so nervous for Lizzie to be there.
He said he'd made some mistakes in the past. I don't know. I just felt like it was just implausible that he would cock the whole thing up, and just also when it would have been so easy, given the nature of their relationship, it would have been so easy for him to say something like, "Look, you are so important to me. We're still a new couple. I just can't run the risk of it all going pear-shaped. So forgive me. Do you mind if I rescind your invitation? If you insist on coming, though, of course, you are very, very welcome." I don't know. Even that sounds a bit crass.
I think you should just say, listen, I got 3 psycho exes. They're going to be at the wedding. Are you up for it? And then just see what she says.
Yeah, although it does say something, because she kind of inferred it when she said, "And I will be there to help you deal with the psycho exes." And that's the point, isn't it? The whole reason that you are the whole reason that you were in a relationship, beyond, all of the, beyond the fun that you have together. The whole reason that you're together is to support each other, and how, backs pointed at each other, ready to see it, fight against the world if necessary. And that's that was her point, wasn't it? You should have had me there so I can help you sort that stuff out. And actually, who better? You can imagine Lizzie absolutely tearing one of them to pieces if necessary.
I said words to that effect on the Twitter account tonight, that she's going to down a load of Lower Loxley white wine and then tear 3 new arseholes at the wedding, which I didn't get much thanks for.
Precisely 3 new arseholes, yeah.
Yeah, somebody said thank you for that contribution. What can you do?
Well, Matthew, I will say that, regardless of our faults, you, me, and Keri are very, very consistent.
Well, there are exceptions. Like, we are malleable. We can admit, or we can change. I mean, Lee, we changed our mind about Lee, didn't we?
Yeah,
to an extent.
Not just because he came. I mean, actually, I'm trying to. Was there a kind of confirmation bias? Did I sort of start to soften on Lee when we knew Ryan was coming on the pod? I don't think so. I think we'd already had some conversations off mic where we talked about the fact that Lee had we turned around. You turned me around on Russ completely. I was very anti Russ until you sold me the benefits of seeing him as a kind of like a sort of an opportunity to mainline pantomime villainy, which I quite enjoyed. And who else? And also, I will say, I am, as I said, even Helen. I've enjoyed Helen's scenes since, because I feel like Lee has breathed fresh life into Helen as well. So I feel like Helen is evolving as a character now that Lee is now that Lee's a bit more interesting.
Yeah, her taking on Kyle, I think
that was fun.
That was a big boost. And for me, with Lee, it was just the way he dealt with Adam and Ian. I felt that he was a rock.
Oh God,
to them. I mean, well, obviously they've made up, haven't they? I mean, let's touch on it briefly. Adam and Ian. Adam's new job. Ian's making. I mean, how you can make a career out of just cooking tagine?
Yeah, yeah. It's I have a little rule when it comes. It's not a hard and fast rule, but I tend not to eat food when I go out that I can cook competently at home. And I have a feeling that if I ate at is it the Orangery, or is that the wrong place?
The Orangery is at Lower Loxley. This is at Grey Gables.
Shade Tagine, or whatever it's called. It's,
Rage Against the Tagine.
See, okay, I would appreciate the joke. It's a bit like the Sight for Sore Eyes was the name of the ophthalmists in near where I lived in America. But anyway,
yeah.
If I can imagine that I could do a competent job for all the stuff in the restaurant, I'm just not interested in eating there, and I have a feeling that Ian would fail that test.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, you often have to. Well, I know, and Keri knows, that you're often quite involved in culinary adventures for your baby boy. Do you really think it was that amazing that Ian had set aside a small portion of tagine that didn't have all the spices in it for Xander? Adam just seemed to think that was incredible.
I think you have to accept your food's going to taste worse when you've got a small one, because you have to put less salt in. So, and you actually, one of the things is, like you've been, as a professional chef, you know all the tricks that restaurants use to basically make food that tasty. And it's for French cooking, it's a whole pat of butter and a shitload of salt, right?
It is. And when you start cooking for other people at home and you start to employ those tactics, people start looking at you like you're trying. They start dialing the first 2 nines. They think you're trying to kill them.
Yeah.
But it is true. A lot of salt, a lot of fat, a lot of richness, a lot of butter. And I used to cook things for people at home, and this was a particular trait in Ireland, like something as simple as like some steak and potatoes and stuff like this, and everything I knew on that plate was ready to go in the mouth. And you put it on the table and I'm like, oh, before you sit down, can you have the salt? And I'm like, just taste it first. One of the big problems in Ireland I noticed, and I'm sure this does happen in England as well, but I can only base it on my experience, is that people will get their plate, cover it in salt, start to eat, and then call the waiter over and say it's too salty. And they've just thrown half a kilo of salt over the plate and they didn't bother to taste the food first. And that used to happen a lot.
What you were describing about working in the profession, like the reverse happens when you've got a toddler. So you start, your palate adjusts because you're not putting any salt in anything. And all of a sudden you start to taste these other flavors in the food. And actually now I find myself quite sort of unable to eat very salty food. It kind of puts me off. But yeah, the spiciness, I mean, just let the kid have the spices. I mean, my little boy has had, I mean, yeah, I don't go crazy. It's not like sort of like, what are those sort of things? Not bell peppers. What are the absolutely insanely hot?
The Reaper chili.
Oh, well, yeah, no, but well, exactly all those ones. Yeah, like the ghost pepper. I don't sort of like put ghost peppers on his Weetabix, every morning. But it's yeah, you just let him have a little bit of spice.
My cousins, for the first years of their life, my auntie used to just keep the rubber seal on the bottom of the salt cellar at the table. So the adults would add the salt, they would ask for it, and they would get like a mime salt. So they thought they were getting it, and they just wanted it out of habit, but they never consumed it. And then they would eat their food thinking that salt had gone on it, even though it was all a ruse. So sorry, Richard, who works in the city now in London. She conned you. She didn't give you any salt. I'm sure he's fine with it, though. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I work.
You better hope so, Matthew.
Yeah,
it's going to have some devastating repercussions.
If I see a complete stock market crash overnight, I knew he lost the plot. But I worked with a Czech chef when I was living in Dublin, and he had managed to keep his great-grandmother's cookbook or great-great-grandmother's cookbooks of Czech cooking. And he said that Czech cuisine was up there almost with the French, but after the First World War, that all went to pot. Like the ability to get your hands on some of this food and to have all the ingredients. So he said there was some great cookery coming out of there, but they changed an entire direction.
Yeah,
well, it's a very different podcast this week, isn't it?
Yeah, welcome to Cookery Hour with Matthew and Peter.
Next up, we're going to be talking about Russell Mulcahy's Highlander film from 1986, The Sword and Immortality.
I will happily do a special cider shed with just Keri's welcome, but she'll have to watch the show 50 times before she's allowed to join in on that one special Highlander episode. But the reason we've been going off on our various tangents is because it's you and me, and it was always going to happen. And then the other thing is also that we're trying to desperately avoid talking about the Aldridges and their calamitous life. And I was actually thinking today as I was listening to the episode. Because for once I was all on my own. I didn't have any distractions. I was just listening to doing nothing but listening to the episode. And I just realized this today was supposed to be a momentous occasion. Jennifer hears that Adam's leaving the farm. It's one of the big farms. It's one of the big two farms, really, isn't it? It's one of the most serious. It's definitely the most serious farm. And I couldn't care. I just could find no part of me that cared about Adam leaving this new job and who's the new person in charge of the fish and the crop rotation going to be. It was just dull.
No, I'm with you on that. I mean, it was one of those situations where the two of us were listening to tonight's episode, and that first scene, we're just looking at each other like, what's going on here? Other than the fact that it's Brian talking, which is always good. And I know it was this idea that they were never going to completely see eye to eye, but it was this idea that they were going to have a little bit of friction, but ultimately there was some serenity there, and it's this time of Adam leaving Bridge Farm. But at the same time, can you name the farm that he's going to? He kept on saying it had about 20 syllables. Or was it the guy's name? I just couldn't catch it. Couldn't catch what he was saying at all.
I think it was called Big Impressive Progressive Mega Farm, wasn't it?
Yes. Like that? Yeah, that must be it. I like
the desperation in his voice. Oh no! Well, he's really got some amazing ideas. And oh God!
But as much as you weren't invested in that, I wasn't invested in Jennifer's reaction either.
Yeah.
At this point, must be like, "What have you done, Brian?" And I chuckled to myself there because I was like, "Yeah, of course Brian's going to get the blame." And at one point, I was like, oh no, please don't confess about the $5,000 again. I thought that was coming at one point because Jennifer was there was a bit of needle, wasn't she? She was pushing, but luckily, it seems to have been passed off as just a fact that she wanted she wants a hand in who is going to be employed afterwards. So it'd be interesting to see where they go with this. Who's the person coming in? But in terms of or if we even get to hear them, I worry so much these days about what we're not going to hear in the Archers. Like, I worry we're not going to hear the wedding. Like, I want to hear the wedding. I want to hear Lizzie at the wedding with Vince and the exes and Iris. I want all of that, but I fear we're just going to hear about them discussing it afterwards. And
I know what you mean, and I've kind of, I haven't said it as directly as you just did, but I've often complained about some of the scenes that we're not hearing. Like, where's Robert Snell? I miss Robert Snell. I miss Jim. I miss silly little scenes. Like even Jazza and Tracy have had a good run recently, but I kind of miss some of their silliness. I didn't want to hear about Jazza and Tracy's love life. I wanted to I wanted to have a little kind of vignette of them sort of bickering over breakfast, and sort of like joking about what they've been up to. That and I think that the sort of famously the new script, the new kind of editor-in-chief, or whatever the proper name for the job title is, it's got kind of EastEnders chops, and has kind of got a background in kind of proper soap operas. And I feel that, like, for me anyway, I want some of them all kind of pastoral and slow, kind of kitchen table stuff that we kind of grew up with. But I also have said many times, I think it's a real high point at the moment, and it is very entertaining. But I'm basically agreeing with you, Matthew.
Yeah, I think we'll have to hear Russ and Lily going to Trace's, won't we? I mean, I'm just incredibly sad that it won't be at Greenacres, and it's going to be Jim and Russ, because Jim wasn't too happy with Russ when he came in on the Christmas production. But I think we're going to have to hear that one, because I feel as we said, I think they're building something up with that storyline. But yeah, I reckon we're going to miss out on the wedding. I've got a sinking feeling, and I hope I'm wrong about that.
I mean, Jim, you did have the scene where Vince skewered Russ's pomposity, and Russ was actually very gracious on being caught out for being a pretentious idiot. Do you remember when Vince was kind of talking, was basically sort of talking, was revealing that he had some history of art knowledge?
Yeah, that was that week that they were all hanging out at Lower Loxley, wasn't it?
Exactly, yeah, the sort of the staycation week. And I feel like, Jim and Russ, that would be such if they could come up with a plot for the two of them where they were kind of forced into some kind of scenario, and you have sort of Jim's kind of deep and, well-learned sort of and passionate understanding of his topics, and Russ's kind of more sort of, I don't know, glossy for show knowledge. I think that would be really, seeing them rub up against each other again would be great.
He already massively dissed him, didn't he? That Ghost Stories production. Was it Linda that said, like, we've had night, or was it, maybe it was Lizzie that said to Jim, we've had an idea that maybe you could get some help from Russ, and Russ was right there, and he went, "This Russ."
I can't believe I've forgotten about that.
It was a great line from Jim.
I do remember that Jim was sort of particularly resolute about how he was going to be doing his little trip to the attic.
Yeah, they're very good. I'm going to have to go and have a look, see if they're on sounds. I know that the Canterbury Tales vanished, but
I'm looking forward to when when Google and Siri, Google and Siri get to the point where I can just say, get me that stupid scene with Russ and Jim, and that'll be enough.
Yep. That's or maybe someday someone will say, Siri, find me that episode 20 of The Cider Shed where Peter and Matthew rambled about seasoning.
Yeah, Peter went on an epic and probably edited rant about British food history for some bizarre reason. I'll just say that now, actually. If something Matthew says about Czech cooking seems a little bit incongruous, that's why. Because I've just saved you from about 4 minutes of absolute tosh. Not a huge amount that hits the floor, but the stuff that does is, oh my God, it's bad.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we really should do at Christmas is just make a compilation of your muffed introductions.
It's this. It's just it's a It's one of those moments of total self-awareness where I can see right into the center of my soul, and there's not much there.
I mean, Elvis Costello said that one of the secrets to like hitting the note when he's singing is he realized one day just don't think about the next note.
Yeah.
If you think about it, you don't hit it.
Yeah, so it's just like, oh, please love me, please like me. In the fluffed attempts, you can just hear this little voice. Oh, hello everyone. Don't hate me. I'm a nice man, really. Before I finally summon up the courage to say
It's
hello.
funny you say that because my intros when you're on holiday, I just mimic you.
Thank you for the compliment. I thought you sounded absolutely amazing. We're fully up our own asses now. This is absolute.
Yeah. We're going to get so much hate mail.
This is exactly the type of podcast material I detest. So maybe we should.
If you want to send us hate mail, it's hello@thecidershed.com.
Yeah, that'll come to me, and I will respond politely and probably agree with you. Matthew, if people want to send hate mail to you, how do they do that?
What do you want my address?
Oh, well, actually, I would like your address. It'd probably be quite useful if I ever find myself in northern Porto.
We've got a spare room, yeah.
If they want to use the social medias,
yes. So we are at the Cider Shed Pod on Twitter, and we are also at the Cider Shed Pod on Instagram, and we are on Facebook as the Cider Shed Podcast. So that's where you find us on our socials.
And on Twitter, okay, I'm actually gonna have to look this up.
I just gave it, Peter.
Did you? Oh, no. No, because I'm just in my routine. I'm such a creature of habit. You do Facebook and Instagram. Keri does Twitter. We've done so in my head, we then had to do Twitter.
I just did all of them. I did the email, I did the Twitter, I did Instagram, God. I did Facebook. That's all right. There's a very clean cut there, so you'll be fine.
No, we'll just leave it all in. It's the new Peter. Gone are the days of fussing over these little things. It's just, it's like what's it called? Fucking hell, I can't even say it. No, we are going to have to edit it now. Who's the guy who wrote the wrote the whole book? Jack Kerouac wrote the whole book on the road in one go on one spool of paper, famously. So yeah, that was the analogy I was going to draw.
Okay, so we're comparing ourselves to Kerouac. Okay.
Only in the attempted methodology, not in terms of the final quality.
I feel like I've done the same amount of drugs tonight.
Have you? What? But like Roy, we've managed to create a kind of a almost hallucinogenic state by just creating sort of artificial exhaustion.
Yes. Oh, some interesting news. I finally managed to get my hair long enough to achieve a top knot or a man bun, and I'm going to get an undercut next week because I'm going down to the Algarve. So there's a slim possibility that I'm not here next week, but I will try to do what I can.
Well, that'd be quite good because we can then have all the different flavors of dysfunction when one of us isn't here. Also, please, do not have a top knot and undercut without documenting it from all 4 angles or 3 angles and putting it on the social medias. I feel that is something that we all need to see. And also, well done. Every marriage needs stress testing, either not intentionally, but every marriage needs a challenge, and this is going to probably provide yours with one.
Well, yeah. Let's see. I mean, maybe I won't even be on holiday next week as a result of having this.
Chuck in a tash.
Well, I've kind of got a tash.
Okay, well, this is going to be absolutely fantastic. You're going to look like kind of the 1980s from the nose down and the sort of the 2010 from the nose up.
Yeah, I have to be careful. I was making a little video on social media today showing some vinyl, and it didn't occur to me that I was stood in front of the mirror and it's very hot. I was practically in the buff, so then had to redo the entire video with a t-shirt on.
I think we'll all be fine with that, Matthew. This is definitely enough tosh. I'm gonna suggest strongly that we stop talking.
Absolutely, 100%.
All right. Well, we'll continue talking nonsense off mic, and Keri needs to come back because this is unsupportable.
She needs to save you.
Come back, Keri,
and save us.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.